Hi, I'm Min from Ponder the Education. As I mentioned before, Ponder the Education is a study method provider. So generally, that the study method meaning that you can actually process the information and then you can make the connections, which I call it building concepts and connecting concepts, and that's what the method you literally connect from by the causation the reasonings together with the evidences and result all together, and then you can increase that one by one systematically by thinking processes. So that's what I do. And the reason that I have developed that specific study method, and then it is also the teaching method, is because to teach my son who has autism. Right now, he's in Simon Fraser University in here in BC, Vancouver area. That now as a the university students, but in the beginning when because there is no educational method for them to develop these thinking processes, so I had to develop this method. It has been over 10 years of the development, and now I published paper. Let me just let me show you in a second with that. So basically, so this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to really talk about the education for people with autism, which is a history of my the educating my son. But one of the thing is that I'm not gonna go into the details of the step by step the method because it has to be build up. So basically, you have to start from the step one, step two, step three, and then step by step. But what I'm going to do from this the YouTube video, I'm going to provide a generalized information and educational strategy for the people with autism. How you can plan your plan your education for your children, or if you have anyone who in your family member that you want to educate, then this one is the one that you can think about and then you can generalize it. So in terms of my the education as an education provider, I also include this consultation and for the people with autism in their family. Well, actually, it is for the family members because family members are the one that who have to work on them, right? So, but that's what I do. And then once the initial consultation is done, then if the you need some help for the designing all those education plannings, and then more likely it is kind of mixture of coaching and consultation because sometimes you can get consultation from me about how to design your own, but at the same time I can show you what to do for yourself because to teach people with autism, you have to change your life, you have to change your approaches. So actually the coaching step had to be implanted at the same time. Okay, but that's not that's what I do in addition to the study methods, uh, teaching study methods, and then providing classes and those kind of things. But that's what I do for the consultation. But for this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that the generalized information about the autism and then how you can plan your education for these people. Okay, so for that, let me show you my website first. So if you go to my website and there's publication, I have one publication that I made about the autism. Well, this paper has a little bit of error because I sent out the versions and then I sent out final versions after editing it, but somehow the publisher published the older version, one version before, so the errors were not corrected from their end. So uh, that's why that I have some typos and couple of the errors in there. But overall, that's those are minor from my viewpoint. Overall, it has all my story, and this paper is free. So you can download it from either my website or through the publishers. You can download it. So it's totally up to you. Okay. So to briefly give you my history, my son still, when he was 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago or something, almost 3 years ago, when we went to the pediatrician, the pediatrician actually gave him the permanent disability so that he can get support from the for his life. So he is permanently disabled in terms with the autism. But in the beginning, when he was young, what I noticed was that he was very focused on one thing, then he really get into it, and then he was not able to really harmonize with other kids to play with. And everywhere we go, then we heard the story that this kid is different, this kid is different. And my wife and I kind of thought that that was kind of changed over time. But later, when we started from Montreal to diagnose the kind of the tests were started from Montreal where we lived, and then when we moved to Vancouver, all the information transferred and got finalized in here. So it took time because we had to move from Montreal to Vancouver. So the many people suggested to uh, have him checked out. So we did it, and then now his autism has been confirmed from that point, and then until now that he lives with it. So in the beginning, I was kind of well, my wife and I also discussed about it a lot, and then we kind of thought that the adopting the currently existing education system, which is called ABA. But what I noticed was that it's like a training kids, like a just same routines, repeating the same routines, and training kids to adapt to the environment just like other kids. It doesn't really show any systematic approaches of developing brain thinking processes and connecting with the social environment. So we decided to drop this ABA, and we moved on our own pace and on our own education plan, and then we went with it. And the reason that I started developing the teaching methods and learning methods at the same time for the people with autism is because there's once we drop this ABA, there's nothing but well, there is a SLP language pathology is in there, but the and the occupational therapies, all those were there. But problem with them is that there's no systematic way of really making developing these kids to started thinking and aware of the surroundings. So I decided to go on. So first thing I did is I did the research, and you're probably familiar if you have any family member with autism, then you're probably familiar with this person, right? Dr. Temple Grandin, who is, I believe, Colorado State University professor in biology department, and she wrote a lot about autism, and I believe she provides seminars altogether, right? And one thing that she stresses in her books and speech is she thinks in different. She thinks in pictures, right? I watched this and I read some of the articles of her, and what I starting point was something like the same place. If this was the assumption that I made, if the people with autism think in pictures, then how do I connect the picture thinking with language thinking? That was the first challenge. So I had to approach in that way. Of course, that some of the autism people with autism, they cannot really, because of the brain, the kind of mutations, they are not able to really speak. And then I read one article from CNN. I don't know, it was the actual news. Well, it was a news, but it was just an article that written, or I don't remember. But in the article that in the CNN, that what I found out is that there was a one uh, graduate who gave a graduation speech, but she was not able to speak. So the way that she delivered the speech was the using computer and typing in, and then computer speaks out for her. And then and the reason is she does that is because with the autism and unable to really speak, she had to use tools to uh, make the speech like that, right? So there are a variety of the people with different levels of the language skills and thinking processes, different types of the thinking processes. And at the time when I started developing, that was like about 12 years ago, I didn't know where to start. So I started with her. And then from her speech, what I've learned was that if the autism people with autism start thinking in pictures, then how to connect it with the language? That's the first challenge, right? This was confirmed with my son's case later, when right now he's able to express his the reasonings. That's why he could go to the university. That he can we can discuss about it. So in this case, my son also confirmed that he mostly think in pictures. And you might wonder what is really thinking in pictures is about, right? Thinking, thinking, oops, in pictures. What does that mean? This means that, well, the it is some kind of misleading it at this point from my viewpoint, because that from according to my son, it's not just a thinking in pictures. He's actually making the movies inside of his brain. So it's like a movie, like a the the thinking, right? Like a dreaming. When we are dreaming, for me, I'm a language thinker. Now I sometimes think the kind of picturing the things inside of my brain, and then I can simulate it once in a while. I could do that just like a dreaming. People when they are dreaming, then all the images and all these sensory system turns on, and then the sometimes even the dream looks like a feels like a real, right? But that happens inside of the brain. And then I can take that a little bit. That's after like a many of years of the training. Now what I can do is I can picture things inside of my brain, and then I can simulate it a little bit. You probably have the similar experiences if you are playing like a golf, right? When you are lying down in the bed, and then when you look up the ceilings, and then you all of a sudden you started thinking that you are in the field, and then you kind of like simulating yourself how to hit the balls or something like that, right? So I believe many of you had this type of experience. This my son said that that happens a lot inside of his brain. And also Temple Grandin talks in the TED talk, she also addressed that. She said it's like a simulation ongoing, and then all these gears and equipment is moving, and then she could just make them to move and design something like that with it, or something like that, right? So basically like a virtual reality is going on inside of their brain. My son when also told me that those are happening inside his brain, and sometimes these people with autism kind of misunderstood by other people is because of those kind of thinking. Because the one of the example is that my son when we were going down to the Balcara beach because here in the BC area that we have a Balcara beach nearby, and then my son was volunteering there for the crab studies and something like shoreline research or something like that, and then he was volunteering, so I was driving him there. And when on the way down to the Balcara beach, what we found was that there was one person got hurt falling into the ditch. There was a bike person who was riding bike, and there were some of the people just tried to get the ambulances and try to help him around it. And my son, when he as soon as he looked at the person who fall into the ditch, he my son just turned his face the other way around, and then he started laughing. He knows that when he left, then people kind of going mad and angry, and then take that the some sign that in this serious situation, person got hurt, but he was laughing at that and that situation, then that's not gonna be really pretty, right? So my son learned how to turn his face when he was laughing at. But when we arrived, I asked him why he left, and then my son said, explained to me, saying that he knows that situation is really serious, and he knows that he would call 911 to bring the ambulance in. But one thing he couldn't control is the inside of his brain, that in like a cartoon there was one of the animal like going into one place and falling into one the other, like flying and falling into the other side of the ground, and then you when you look at the cartoon, people laugh at that the those type of situation, right? So that popped inside of his brain, so he couldn't really control himself that the laughing. So that's the things that are ongoing, something like that. That's what makes them to showing differences in the social environment. And when other people think it is serious, they probably laugh, or they could express in different way because there's a unexpectedly and sometimes uncontrollably they could bring up some of the images like that, and then simulation ongoing, just like what temple grandin is described. I'm not sure that there's other types of the thinking because, well, it could be, there could be, because instead of visual, the bats, animal bats, they make these sounds as some of the signals they interpret into the images so that they can catch their uh, the food, or they can fly avoiding the any obstacles, and that's how they do, right? So I'm not sure that could be in human brain as well. I believe there could be, because the human brain, well, the making the images just like a radar kind of thinking process with the sound might be there too, right? So then in that case, then probably sound is kind of hurting them when they are try to interpret the information. But that's the problem compared to this movie like thinking. That's probably very minor, I think. Yeah, that's from my interpretation. But anyway, so with this, without knowing, just confirming, or I should say, without confirming that my son is picture thinking, now I had to make the connections. So what I did was I described whatever he was looking at. For example, if he was looking at the salmon, I described this salmon, and then so that he can connect the language with the object that my son is looking at. Then, with this method, he was able to really start going onto the same page as me, and then communication can start build up from there with this. And because my son loves the salmon and then fish, we went to the aquarium a lot. And he likes drawing, and he when he draws the fish, draws with all the detail. Okay. Of course, there's some cartoon like characters in there, but his memories are about the fish because he likes the fish. That his memories about the fish characteristics are very deep and specific in the many of the cases. And he started building these the observation skills, and then I was able to connect it. But until grade three, even though he was able to communicate with me, well, not in full sentences sometimes, but short sentences, and then a few of them, there was a limitation, but still he was able to communicate in everyday life with my wife and myself, but not at the school. He wasn't able to really communicate with other kids or with the teacher. So until grade three, he was teacher didn't even know he could say a word or simple sentences. Teacher thought that he's completely non-verbal. Okay. Anyway, he had EAs until the grade 10, and academically, no one expected that he could really catch up in the secondary school, in the high school, but he was able to do it. Well, of course, there was a education assistance, so that he could get. He was just following this EA's instructions when he was doing his schoolwork until grade 10. But I want him to be independent, so I asked him actually to be independent, and he agreed with it. So starting from grade 11 and 12, he left the learning support and the EA, and then he started doing everything by himself with, of course, with my guidance. And then my wife was involved in the education. And for about 2 years of intensive the study method, implementation of study method, and catching up the school work, he was able to achieve some certain grade that is high enough to go to the university and SFU biology right now. And then as his grade improves, now he started making uh, friends around him at the same time. So he's just still meeting with his friends in SFU because they all went to the same. Some of them are same department and some of them are different, but they are going into the same university and they are meeting pretty much every day during the weekdays. Anyway, that's like a more like a overall stories. One of the thing that the tips that I can provide for with this YouTube video about if you have like a the family member with or friends with autism, then this is what I suggest. The specific step-by-step methodology is on the paper that I published. And then if you want to hear about it, then you can contact me and then we can set up some sort of like a consultation, initial consultation sessions. And then initial consultation sessions that what I do is I don't charge for the any money, but what I ask is that I ask for your support. So if you go to my website, mm, this one, if you go to my website, then here's a support page, and there is the ways to support me, my work and my company with the by making some of the payment. Then what that means is that if you think that you had some useful time with me during the consultation, then you can pay like about the maximum of I don't go like more than 50 for the initial consultation, because initial consultation is takes most of the time on the introduction, and mostly that the discussion about the some of the specific things that you are gonna bring it in. But after initial consultation is done, then either you think that that was not helpful, then you don't have to send any support, like a this kind of donation. You don't have to send any support. If you think that you got some help, then you can pay as your situation allows, a maximum of $50. But when it comes to real consultation and coaching uh, sessions, then that's really where I charge the fees for uh, hourly, based on the hourly sessions. Okay, but anyway, that's more likely specific steps that if you trying to implant my methodology from the paper, and then if you wanted to learn how to do those and how to make the plan your sessions with your kids, and how to train BIs or to train yourself to really guide your the guide the people with autism in a way to connect with the social environment and then move on to their own life, then that's where it goes. But for now, what I'm going to provide is generalized information, what you need to look at, and how you can set up the environment for the person who, for now, what I'll do is I'll consider the autism, a person with autism as a kid. Okay, so young age. So how to set up with those kids, the environment wise, and how to design general approaches for your specific the goals for to achieve. Okay, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of the video for this time. So here's the one thing. First, let's say person with autism, child with autism is in this, to put it in the center. The first thing you need to do is that you have to hold the communication uh, as much as possible. That means if you are showing angry, you are angry, or you show some emotional stresses or something, then what will happen? Your kid will started blocking the communication. Your kid will start the feeling kind of uncomfortable and then scared. And think about yourself. If you are uncomfortable with someone, and if you are feeling a little angry with at someone, then are you gonna be communicating with them? Are you gonna be happy to talk to them? That doesn't happen, right? So that same thing happens with the child with autism. You have to make the communication channel open all the time. The best way to do is, unless it was like a dangerous situation where your child hurt themselves, or hurt him or herself, or your child kind of jump into some dangerous situation. Unless that happens, you might not want to really show how angry you are, and force your child to do something in your way, then because it'll be blocking. Especially this one worked very well with the BIs. I trained B. I didn't really train BIs, but I asked the BIs to, because at the time I didn't have any methodology to apply to my son. So the best way was that ask BIs that he working with my son together to make him happy and do something my son enjoys, like going together to the aquarium, or walking on the mall and buying some ice creams, or go to the park, or have some time with the drawing together. And this is what I asked. And then I asked the BI not to really interfere any his of activities unless it is dangerous. He put himself in danger. Okay, so that's what I did. And then because of that, my son, he didn't have peers to play with together, but his peers were actually BIs. We had like about three or four different BIs work, but one or two working at the same time, one or two, sometimes three. So he actually had friends, and BIs are the ones that the friends. Of course, he had a language pathologist as well, but mostly his time was with the BIs, and he they are the one that his friend. And also at home, we didn't, my wife and myself didn't really force him to do something that against his will. We tried to talk to him. So there's a one of another. This is one of the important thing. One thing that we asked the BI, and one thing that we did in the beginning, we talked to them a lot. Even though there's no responses from my son, constantly ask the questions and describe something. Okay, and then the same thing we ask the BIs to do like that. But they later, if you look at, if you read the paper of the that I wrote, then you'll see that there is a differences in the description and there is a differences in the questions. It's not any questions that you wanted to ask, but so there's a specific questions to make to for the to make the brain to think and then make the connections with the world. There is a specific questions to really the you need to use. And for that, you have to train yourself, and then you have to modify it based on the my consultation or coaching steps. And then to do that, because unless you modify these questions to deliver to the kids, they won't be able to really make the connections and uh, gradually increase the connections to the world. Okay, so but for now, at the time, it was the initial stage, so there was no such a thing as a specific types of the questions or descriptions. And what we did is we just did the best of our way to just talk to him and then ask him the questions. And well, anytime, any type of the questions, we didn't really consider about, like what do you like, or why do you do this, and what how you want it to do, or what do you want to eat, or something like this, right? Those are the ones that easier to do. And then ask them the how do you like it, how do you feel it, or something like that. So those are the questions that we asked and we described and we talked to them, talk to him together. Okay, so that's the first step. And second step is, as I developed the strategies, what I noticed was that emotion was not uh, uh, emotion was not the one that we wanted to go, because emotion, it seems to be misunderstood easily. Okay, and for the emotions to describe, then you have to have very specific descriptions about the emotion. For example, if with the, let's say, one of the photo, this is what many, even SLP, I saw that SLP was using it. Some of the photos that saying that, oh, this kid is struggling to climb up the hill, right? So then this, you can show this photo and saying that this is struggling. You can say it, but problem with it is that without detailed description why it is struggling and why it is interpreted as a struggling, then this kid might think different ways. As I said, this my son with the autism, what he does is he overlaps with other images inside of his brain, and then he laughs, right? Then let's say this climbing up with a struggling kid, if other images overlaps inside of his brain, then he's not going to focus on this. He's going to focus on what he pictures inside of his brain. So this, if this doesn't match together, then even though this one was repeatedly taught, then they might learned how to interpret this by just mechanically reply, okay, struggling, but real inside of a brain, his their process is different. Because of that, they just later they will just say this one is not the one that they constant keep inside of their brain. And think about it. If you are not interested in anything, then your brain doesn't store the information. Even if you store one of the information about, for example, let's say you store the information about one of the apple, like a Fuji apple, or Macintosh Apple, Macintosh Apple. Well, there is actually uh, the Macintosh Apple, the one of the Apple as a Macintosh, right? So let's say Macintosh Apple is there, right? Then you learned that Macintosh Apple is delicious. And later on, if you haven't seen this apple for like about years, well, about a year or so, then you won't remember, you will probably forget this name Appletosh, and then you will just remember, oh, there's a one apple that was so delicious, and I don't remember the name, but there was one apple that was delicious. This will be the most of the memory that you will have left. The same thing will happen if your child cannot really make a strong connection and then really understand the reasonings why is it struggling, and then if your child will try to remember that the inside of the brain, the memories that the inside of their brain, that there's any type of related images that they created their own, then they will be isolated from the world a little bit more. So it's kind of going apart a little bit more and more. So one of the things that you might want to really consider is that you will probably see that as age goes up, the gap between the world and these people with autism getting growing bigger and bigger. The reason is because of this. You're trying to teach the average emotion, the knowledge from the emotion, and try to deliver. This is a normal people's emotion that they can accept it. But problem with it is inside of their brain, if that image doesn't match with the thinking process of their own, then it'll be rejected. As it rejects more and more, then gap between those world and the these people will be more bigger and bigger. So that's why we didn't focus on the emotion. Also, as I said, ABA was not the one that we pursued. The reason is that re- training repeatedly to do something in routine is the best fit for the survival. So, for example, crossing the street or avoiding some dangerous danger, then you have to repeatedly train them so that they can avoid those situations, and they automatically respond what to do in that dangerous situation so that they can avoid the dangers. But if that comes into the real training, what will do is repeatedly training. Well, this is a real case. I mean, I heard that people, when I was in the military, I did my military service in Korea for about 2.5 years. And then when I was in DMZ, demilitarized zone where North and South Korea borders, there was we had the dog, actually the trained dogs in there, and then there was the soldier who training that dog, and at the same time the taking care of the dog. And when I had a communication with that soldier, that colleague said that training dogs is not easy. They many of them are failing, and only few of them are successfully going on. And what they do is they repeatedly do the same routine over and over, and the with the some treat. So if they follow the order, then give them the treat. If they don't follow the order, then they give them punishment. And then with this way, that the trains are the dogs are trained, and with that, many of them are failing, and only a few are successful. So that's what I heard. And think about it. You, your child is a human, not a dog. And teaching them repeatedly the same situation over and over might make them to behave in the similar situation, behave as they learned, but that doesn't really provide any brain power to think and make a judgment by themselves. What they do is they well the as I mentioned, the dogs, even they were trained, what they can do is they can do exactly as they were trained, nothing else. Basically, these kids can harm or they look like they're in the same routine and doing the same thing, but they're not gonna be able to really develop thinking processes to make their own judgment based on their own thinking. So these are the reasons, and also if they were being trained, then later when they face some situation where it is a new environment, then they'll have trouble because won't be able to really adjust that environment and blend into that environment. Then the gap between this society and the autism people will be bigger and bigger, right? Only the person who can think and try to find ways to how to blend into the society can reduce the gap. That's not, I don't think, I don't, from my viewpoint, ABA is not the one in that viewpoint. Okay. It has to be the person who need to think by themselves, himself or herself to reduce the gap. So if you watch this Temple Grandin's TED speech, I think that is there. I mean, I think I heard that story from there because what she said, I don't know which one it is, but what she said is that if I remember it correct, then she said she had to come early, about 20, 30 minutes early and get adjusted to the environment, right? What does that mean? She learned how to adjust to the environment. And she really did it, right? And also, well, when my son was presenting in high school, and then those are the ones that the presentation is were the one that the graded by the peers and teachers. What he had to do is he had to simulate the environment, and then he had to give the speech in front of me and my wife, and then he modified as he does and going onto the school and did it. It's not just him. Average people like me myself, when I gave a presentation and my any seminars or any conferences or something, I have to go through with the simulation and then what to do and go there and present it. So it is the same, right? So basically what it means is that the even with autism, these kids have to learn how to adapt to the environment and how to express themselves and how to communicate. And to do that, they have to develop thinking processes. Okay, what to do at this stage, and then analyze the situation, and then make the decision. So then to do that, you have to have some tools to communicate together. And now ABA is not the one. And then communication channel is open because you are really make your kid enjoyable, and then your kid enjoy being with you, and then try to communicate with you, and then try communicate with BIs all together. So your kid is doing it, and then communication channel is to keep going on, and then you're probably the children with autism at that stage is they're kind of copying from these BIs and parents that and learn how to what to do and how to do in given situations. So gradually increase it, but problem is now he doesn't have, or the, I'll just address as a he because it is mostly my son. He doesn't have friends, so he cannot really copy and paste from friends or teachers at school because there are gaps. Okay, right? So friends and teachers, peers are not there, so he wasn't able to learn by copying and pasting from others. Only people he could get was BIs and us, me and my wife. So it was limited. Then now you have to think about, you cannot force your child to play with your kids because we did once. I mean, we did many times. Whenever we went to some of the playground, we asked our son to join them and play with them, and then even asked the kids around him that he's autism and he needs help, and they try to help him and play with them. But in about minute or two, they all give up because my son is in different world. Even though they are together in one trampoline, I think that was, for example, in trampoline, there were like several kids jumping around, and my son was one of them. But my son, you can literally tell my son is in different world compared to other kids. Even the other kids were trying to communicate with him, he doesn't really accept it. So basically, what that means is that you cannot really expect the children with autism learn from peers unless the peers are really. So that's why one of the reasons that we are more likely just more putting the time on the BIs because BIs are adults, and BIs are adults meaning that they try to understand and they try to approach systematically with the kids, and then uh, make them to listen to them and then communicate with them. So BIs are the ones that they are doing it, but not the same age of the children. Okay. So you cannot really expect, and then now you somehow have to expand these kids concepts around the world, but emotion is very challenging, and there will be kind of misunderstanding, a lot of misunderstanding ongoing. So that's not the one that I suggest. Then what could it be? What else left? That's where it comes to nature. As I said, my son loves fish. That's the one. If your son likes some mechanical the things like some like buildings or some like a playground, the machines or anything, then those are the ones. Nature or anything that not emotions involved, right? So basically, doing activities outside of the taking them to the aquarium and together with the BIs or the myself did a lot, and then my family went to the aquarium together with take with the our son a lot, mm, really many times, and then they went to the some other places and the parks and beaches and rivers, and my son likes to fish, so we uh, fished together in the river too. So these are the nature and some things like my son loves to do or focuses on. Those are the ones that we were I was focusing on to develop together with the learning method. So we're using fish. When we go fish, then I taught well literally taught him the what is the fish this especially salmon life cycle look like, and then what happens after salmon died after spawning, and how those decompose the nutrients cycles through the nature and something like that. And these are the stories that I implanted as he goes. So basically, he was able to learn biological stuff, science mostly, that one by one. How the cloud stories and gravity stories and something like those one by one. So with those, he was because of that, he was getting ready for the academic the subjects, and then most of the academic subjects you have to think about it in this way. Most of the well, not most, m- well, yeah, most of the academic subjects, if you try to approach with the emotions, it doesn't work, right? So let's think about it in this way. You have a mathematical formula. For example, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Or let's say this is an empty box that you want to solve. So this is a mathematical formula that you want to solve. Then think about it. Can you solve this with emotions? You cannot. With this, well, 1 plus 1 equals 2 is kind of like a mechanical process. But let's say energy equals what the gravitational energy equals, for example, what the gravity constant plus height and mass of the something like this, whatever. And then if you try to solve this, then you cannot solve with the emotions. You have to have a logical thinking. So for example, you had some of the physics formula that you have to figure out that there's current, how strong the current is, and now you want to go from the other side, and with this current, when you move this some objects from what speed, then where it's gonna be ending up, or something like all this, you have to use logical thinking. Emotion, you cannot do it, right? So what that means is that you have to start these kids to build logical thinking so that they can catch up with this schoolwork first. And later, what this will do, this logical thinking is determining the finding out the results based on reasonings and evidences. So this happens this, and so basically strong current go flows. Current is like a some certain meter per second or something, and then now object is mass is certain, and initial force is something, and you using these initial forces, everything, the elements, you have to draw out the result out of it. And this same thinking process, it will applied in the future when they are determining what to do in their future. For example, when they are working in a job places, then okay, well, this current situation is like this and this and this, and I will to make the result like this. This is goal setting. You to find the answer. I'm going to use this, and then I'm going to combine them and analyze them, and I'll make a decision based on the result. That's how you live your life, right? You make a decision every day by thinking, should I do this? If I do this, then what will happen? If I do this, what will happen? Then how do I approach to make it what I think it has should be? So like you set a goal, and then you try to find some of the logical way to solve this problem or troubleshoot or whatever it is, right? Then they have to study. They have to develop this logical thinking. And the even with the autism kids with autism, they have to develop this logical thinking. This is the only way to reduce the gap between uh, the society with these kids to live in this in human society, right? And for that, you have to think about how you're gonna approach with your kid, how to deliver these the connections in the future. It takes a long time for me. as I said, it took me like about 10 over 10 years. But that was because I was developing it and had to apply it. I have to go back and forth and try it. And then if that doesn't work, then I have to reduce and try find different ways and go back and forth. And at the same time, what I did is I taught at the private university, and then I applied this methodology to the students to see how they can develop their thinking processes. So it was university students and my son and all going back and forth. So it took me about 10 years. But for now, I'm delivering this methodology in organized way. So you don't have to, it doesn't have to be like a 10 years to see the differences. But at least it'll be many years to see the differences because this is a thinking process. It's not easy to make other people to develop easily. Even as I mentioned many times, even Newton or Einstein, they could think like a geniuses. They are geniuses, and they could think as a geniuses. But the thing is that they couldn't teach their students or anyone else other than other people think like them. And otherwise, we have to see a lot of these geniuses. Entire world, there is no one can teach how to think like them, even in Harvard, right? Yeah, if they were able to do it, then well, the all the students from Harvard should think like those professors who won the Nobel Prize, right? But Nobel Prize winning is not easy still. So the tools, the methodology to developing thinking processes is only provided by my company and myself. There are students who are learning from me to develop this, but the systematic way of teaching is still on me. I'm the only one who can teach this, right? So uh, as I showed that general approach, it was like that, and then you can try yourself and see that if you can make the differences. And really suggest to think about yourself that the how you gonna plan your future because this is unknown area yet and you are going different direction. ABA is known, and there are many different methodology that is known, like occupational therapy and the SLP, and those are known. And there are some results that shows some these people with autism can benefit out of it. But systematic approaches of the developing thinking processes, it is not there. Okay. Now, and this is an unknown field. Okay, I'm the only one who were able to systematically have my son develop these thinking processes, and it's not done yet. Still, we are in the processes. So my son is still studying with me. So it's an ongoing the processes, right? Now, if you decided to go as I uh, showed you and in this video, then you can think of yourself that you are kind of facing uncertainty because only results that you can see is my son, and my son is still in developing stages, and so he's not the so one person, one kid with an example is not really convincing. I know, yeah, but as I said, if you are not really stepping into the uncertainty, you are not going to be able to make differences because known ones, if they that worked, right, perfectly, then you don't have to find look for some any other ways to teach your kid with autism, right? Because it is already known, right? But that is not known either. And people don't think about that unknown uncertainty in that side because there is some of the data shows up, and because of that, it's more likely fixated on those area. But I what I suggest is that from now on, I suggest you to really get ready to face uncertainty. I know it is scary. I know it is not really comfortable, but without going through this, without the really having brave heart and stepping out of it, you're not going to be able to really make differences. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll finish up about the autism story in here, and I'll, since I'm the one that talking about the study and learning and teaching methods, I'm going to have those the topics related to those study methods continue with this YouTube videos. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye now.